Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ruymand Show. So last video actually went a lot better than I expected. In fact, a really big portion of the people somehow ended up watching the whole thing. I'm assuming there's a little bit of an interest in this topic. This one's going to be about basically the streaming platforms. Right now there's a streaming wars going where everyone and their mom is making their own streaming service. A lot of the people are looking at these companies and they're saying, oh, Netflix gonna win, oh, Disney gonna win, or Amazon. In reality, they're all gonna be there. I think what's gonna happen is that media is going to completely shift from what we know it to what, well, even if you look at the current TV right now, it's so much different than 50 years ago. Let's go ahead and go over a few of them today. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go over some of my thoughts over it. I don't really know how to explain my channel, but I think my channel is kind of all over the place. It's like sometimes it's music, sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's just me sitting down and rambling, and sometimes it's just meme videos. Subscription business models are the holy grail of business models. In fact, they're one of the best setups you can have because they're very low cost and you can expand them very easily. All of these services or subscription based businesses are rapidly growing where people are no longer really selling you a lifetime product. Netflix is a very great example of this type of business model because their entire business is revolving around subscriber gain. Most of their subscriber count are now outside of the US, but you can see how easy it is for them to scale because they have a subscription model. We have all of these other companies that are doing streaming. There's some really big Asian ones. Still to this day, Netflix is the dominant player. You can argue that Twitch and YouTube are also two of these bigger players. For the sake of this video, we're not going to include that. But if I just put YouTube into perspective, this is how big YouTube is, where single-handedly it kind of has a monopoly. So another thing I did was I actually looked at all of these companies that are around. The top entertainment companies are still American. I actually ended up making my own type of benchmark to try to figure out how successful these companies are, and it's based on how much time did they have to set up their business, their presence, their brand, and all of that. And you can totally tell that Netflix just really is the industry leader in this category. And then we have something called the velocity, so that's like how fast it's really growing and influencing the world. Disney Plus has really been taking off. But I'm not exactly looking at it as Disney Plus. I'm looking at it at all of the Disney assets. So far, Disney has won that game, but you're probably not going to see a continuation of this type of velocity. I think this was just this past year, and this is going to slow down. I took the same type of testing that I did with the momentum and velocity, and I did a bunch of different benchmarks, and then I made kind of an average between those. The most impressive ones were Netflix, Prime Video, Disney, and HBO Max. The most surprising ones where they performed a lot better than they should have, or perhaps better than I expected them, were Peacock and Discovery Plus. Definitely the most disappointing were Apple TV Plus and Paramount Plus. So again, if you take a look at all of these streaming services, everything in the worldwide category performed better than they should have. Everything in the US category, while certainly didn't do horrible, they were very slow. Apple TV Plus, despite it being in the worldwide category, still did not benefit. But Paramount Plus has a lot of stuff, and it still didn't perform in the US. So let's go to the most surprising. You have Peacock and Discovery. Peacock is Comcast, and Discovery is just, the Discovery Channel. I didn't realize the amount of stuff Discovery owns. In fact, now that I've looked at these lists, I've noticed and realized that some of the best programs I watched were owned by Discovery. Bear Grylls and Mythbusters, and Naked and Afraid is another one that I've been watching quite a lot lately. I was very surprised by Discovery because they actually have a very good library, but they're also super cheap. That's $5 a month. I was very impressed by this. And so was I with Peacock. In fact, I think Peacock kind of got one of the biggest wins because they partnered up with WWE Entertainment. So now WWE will exclusively stream all of their content on Peacock. It's kind of a niche, but I consider it a win. And if you look at all of these TV shows they have a free subscription. As in, there is a free version that you can have, but you don't actually get quite a lot of contents with it. Usually what happens is like the first 2 episodes are free, and then the rest you have to actually upgrade to the premium account to be able to watch it. So I guess it's not a bad thing because you can test it out. The Brave New World is my favorite show, and it is on their streaming platform. They shouldn't have canceled it. It was one of the biggest losses they had. And The Office. This is going to go into Netflix a little bit, but there are some shows that are leaving Netflix. And for example, The Office has left Netflix. If you go to the most disappointing one, Apple TV Plus and Paramount Plus. Paramount was actually called CBS All Access, and as soon as Viacom and CBS merged, they decided, you know what, we're going to rebrand CBS All Access to Paramount Plus because Viacom basically owned Paramount. This merger was a good deal for them. It was very hard for them to compete with some of these other media companies because all of their competitors were so much bigger. These are all of the IPs they own. They own very good IPs. The problem is that they're not really working on them, and they're not really developing them anymore. For example, you have Star Trek, which is the biggest IP that Viacom CBS owns, and somehow have managed to kill off an entire franchise. I think the TV shows were not very good. But it's not just those. You know, Mission Impossible, they'll have that. They have Transformers. The problem is that, I think Mission Impossible is a success, but Transformers and Star Trek, they're going to make money because they kind of have a cult following. But it's just, how long is that going to last for? And the biggest thing that Viacom CBS has are the nostalgic content they have, things that, you know, people grew up with. Even then, not all of those content are available on their streaming platform. Next up is Apple TV Plus. It's Apple. They got all the money. They can afford failing. You know, they have enough money to keep building IPs and stuff. They have some okay content, but it's very little. Like, For All Mankind, Apple TV Plus is missing or lacking content. But most of the people who have it basically got it because they bought a product. And it's Apple, so they can afford to not grow. But anyways, let's go to the big four. Netflix has 3 really serious competitors. They're these guys. So let's go to Disney. If you've never looked at Disney or actually see how big they are, they're so fucking big. In fact, they own almost everything. I didn't think they're gonna be able to buy Fox, but somehow they did, and they got the approval, which means that now they're even bigger. I'm not gonna go through this. Just open it up and look at all of the assets they own. So Marvel Studio and Lucasfilms, really the 2 big things that made Disney even more successful in the past few years. You can see the list of the Marvel Studio movies and shows that are coming out, and as well as Lucasfilm ones. When Disney Plus first launched and Mandalorian came out, for a really long time there was really no new content, and then the second one dropped. There were so many people that were let down by the actual movie trilogy, where this is a redemption for Disney and the Star Wars name, where people are going to become interested in Star Wars again. In fact, if you look at like some of the memes that have come out of this, Baby Yoda is now a thing, but The Mandalorian was possibly the best show on Disney, and not just in Disney, but one of the best shows that you can watch right now. Of course, we've had certain things that didn't really go as planned. Caitlyn Kennedy, I think they should replace her. Gina Carano firing certainly didn't make investors happy either, or the fans, just because they had difference of opinion on Twitter. And then you have Kenobi, Ahsoka, Lando, and of course we have Marvel. I think Marvel has figured out how to make TV shows, where these TV shows have a movie quality. They make stuff that you don't even know you want to watch. Look, I had no idea that I even want to watch Shang-Chi, or even a Black Widow movie now, especially because, you know, she's dead. I thought I was done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe after this whole thing, and it turns out it's not true. I don't know how they do it, but they continue to push the limits of entertainment. The Walt Disney Animation Studio, or Pixar, continues to make stuff. Raya and Soul, these things were released during the pandemic. Disney doesn't make a lot of content, but the ones they make are pretty good. So if Disney makes like 20 titles or 25 titles, they're all going to be good. While if Netflix makes, 400 titles, maybe 10 of them are going to be good. So, you know, you have quality versus quantity, but both of that work. You know, there's certainly an audience for that. Here's an interview of the Netflix CEO about the competition.
So there's a lot of competitors all throughout the world, but if you're asking in the US market, YouTube, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix, all launched 2007, 2008, so 11 years ago. The four of us have been, competing hard for all this time. And then everyone's realized, wow, this internet thing really works. And consumers are enjoying it. And so now all the major media companies are investing in their own services. And it's great for consumers. There'll be some more competition for us, but we've already got a lot of competition. And most of it is people will watch less linear TV and now watch, say, Disney content on the Disney Plus service.
So do you think, I guess the real question, though, is do you think that people are going to make decisions and say, I'm going to either do Disney, or I'm going to do Netflix, or I'm going to do HBO Max, or et cetera?
Not in terms of subscribing. People will subscribe to a couple services the way that they subscribe to a couple news services. But then in terms of time, that's the real competition. The tricky thing in this streaming war is, Apple and Disney's not going to break out revenue.
Which didn't end up being true. They did.
For the service, and you'll hear some subscriber numbers, but you can just bundle things in, so that's not going to be that relevant. So the real measurement will be time. How do consumers vote with their evenings, and do they end up watching what mix of all the services? So starting in Q1, you'll start to see a breakout of that, like from Nielsen and others.
This interview was obviously done a long time ago, and what we've seen over the past few months is that this just was not true. And I think he kind of underestimated the competition.
Meantime, I also asked Hastings about the success of Disney Plus reaching 60 million subscribers as quickly as they did, and what the number he had previously expected from the competition.
Oh, maybe 20 million at best. Most companies have a hard time executing on something as radical as, let's go direct to consumer over the internet. And they've done a remarkable job growing to over 60 million in less than 12 months, and it took us like 12 or 13 years to get there. So they're, very focused, obviously, on direct to consumer, but so are we. And I think, we love the challenge, and we want to bring the challenge to them. We want to get better than Disney in family entertainment. And that's going to take 5 or 10 years. They are very, very good at it.
You can definitely tell that there's been some type of a change in his approach as well to this. But in the first interview, he was not worried at all. But he was still concerned that there is competition. It's just that none of the competition has managed to really scale up. He said 5 to 10 years. They don't have 5 to 10 years. Disney has managed to do this in just a year. They have so much content planned out within the next few years. In fact, just in the next 2 years, they have planned like 100 titles. They're all quality. They're all in the family entertainment category. I don't think they have 5 to 10 years, but they don't need to win in every single. Netflix doesn't have to be a family entertainment leader. They're leading in all the other categories. I think both of these services give you something that the other one doesn't. That's competition's good.
But we're very focused, and we continue to learn new things.
What's the lesson in their growth? Is there something, given that you've been surprised by it, is there something you've noticed and said, that's pretty interesting, we should try that?
Well, they've had lots of incredible content, and they've been very aggressive about putting that content onto the Disney Plus service. And then I think it's the power of a great brand like Disney has really carried the day. So if anything, it's emphasized how important it is for us to invest in the Netflix brand and what it represents. Great series, great films that you can relax with anytime.
Let me ask you a different question about one of your other competitors, which is HBO Max. A number of critics have said they sort of stubbed their toe on the way out of the gate. Do you agree with that?
Well, depending on how you read the numbers, they got 3 or 4 million people on HBO Max. So compared to Disney's 60, that's a pretty small number. So I think they've got a ways to go. But they've been a legendary provider of great entertainment for a very long time. So I certainly wouldn't count them out.
All right, so one thing we actually saw was, so recently AT&T, Netflix, and Disney all had their earnings. First, we had the Netflix earnings, and what we saw was that the speed on how much subscribers they were getting slowed down a little. So they were talking about how, because pandemic is over, the demand for content is starting to slow down a little. So their stock dropped a little bit. We saw that this just wasn't exactly true, because HBO Max managed to get another 3 million subscribers, much more than everyone thought they will. And they're only available in the US. So when they go worldwide, are they going to have Disney level of growth? And then today we looked at Disney, and Disney followed the same fate as Netflix. So I think to a certain degree, demand is getting a little lower, but as more content gets put out, I think we're going to be fine. Here's the problem with having competition, is that people don't want to give you, or at least renew the license you have to these content. A lot of these great IPs are leaving Netflix, and there is no leaving section. There's always the upcoming shows section. You got How I Met Your Mother, The X-Files, The Office, Sherlock, Friends, Fast and Furious, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones. And all of the MCU content, the DCCU content, Paramount, Universal, Warner Bros. Everyone's just kind of pulling their plug. So unless Netflix manages to make a lot of movies that are decent, I think they're going to have a little bit of a hard time, but they're going to be still a leader. In fact, if you go and look at all of these originals they're making, they make some good stuff. I think they definitely take a lot less risk now. For example, when House of Cards first came out, people were subscribing to Netflix just to see that show. You have the same thing with other platforms now, where people are subscribing to, let's say, Peacock to see a certain show. They're subscribing to Amazon to see a certain show. They're subscribing to Disney to see a certain show. And sometimes these people only want to watch 1 or 2 shows, and they are still willing to subscribe. Though it's nice to have quantity, it's also nice to have quality. Altered Carbon, I think, was a missed opportunity, but we'll get into that later. So let's go look at some of the other content they have. Of course, these are my favorite content on Netflix. I watch a lot of shows and movies on all of these platforms, so I think they're all going to be okay, all of the big major ones at least, but even Netflix has some really good stuff. I didn't think I don't play chess, and I found Queen's Gambit to be very entertaining. In fact, I started playing chess after I watched that show. Altered Carbon was kind of a missed opportunity, but I think they can recover, And then they have like Bright and Project Power, that are not great movies, but they have great actors. So you're willing to watch them, and you're gonna want more. Shaft was a great one. Stranger Things is okay. I don't know how they're going to really develop that further, but the first 2 seasons were really good. But the biggest thing they have now is The Witcher. I was not expecting Netflix, of all the people, to make a Witcher show that's this good. This says HBO. This says Disney. This says all of these other studios. This does not feel like a Netflix show. It is so high in quality. They're learning. I would subscribe to Netflix just to watch that show. They're on the right path. But they also make you a lot of garbage. For example, Jupiter's Legacy. It's going to take a while for them to figure out family entertainment, but I feel like they get the wrong idea of family entertainment. Right now, the superhero genre is very hot. Amazon has The Boys, AT&T and HBO have DC, Disney has Marvel. They're very good IPs. They can really capitalize on them. Netflix doesn't have something like that, so they kind of made their own, Jupiter's Legacy. Problem is that it's very bad. In fact, it was probably the worst TV show I had seen in the past few months, and they tried to make The Boys of Amazon, but they made they ordering it from AliExpress, so you get the Chinese version. The thing about Amazon is they didn't only do it once. They took The Boys, made it into something amazing, and then they did it again with Invincible. So that's 2. So let's go to Amazon. They have some really good IPs that they developed. Netflix usually goes and buys other stuff. Like Lucifer was an IP they bought from someone else that was already developed. Amazon likes to develop their own, but because just like Apple, they have a really high influx of cash sitting around, they can develop things. Invincible, The Boys, The Expanse, James May, these are all things they kind of made up. The only one they purchased as an IP was The Lord of the Rings, which they're going to use to make a TV show. Prime Video has great library. In fact, it has a lot of content from other platforms, so I don't know how things are going to go with that, but yeah, I don't know. because it says Amazon Original, Star Trek Picard. Anyways, HBO Max is starting to perform now, and it's only available in the US, and it's doing really good in the US now, so I expect it to have Disney level type of growth as soon as it goes worldwide, which is gonna go, I think, before the end of the year. AT&T bought Time Warner, and when they did that, they won. They have a lot of assets. HBO has a ton of even DC stuff to develop. You know, the Batman is one I'm looking forward to.
The hell are you supposed to be? I'm vengeance.
The Justice League Snyder Cut edition was really good. So AT&T has a lot of great content that has cult following. For example, Mortal Kombat. The movie was actually okay, much better than I expected, but they have like 4 other movies coming. I hope that they continue making Justice League stuff. The Justice League movie was pretty bad, but that's because it was incomplete, so they made up the Snyder Cut edition in it, and that was really, really good. Even King Kong. I don't really watch King Kong, but this King Kong, I had a lot of fun with. So as I mentioned, HBO Max got 3 million subscribers, and this is only in the US, which means as soon as they go worldwide, it's going to blow up like Disney Plus. With all of these great streaming platforms around, and some of them performing as good as they are now, this leaves them with a very little margin for error. For example, Disney, they missed earnings and expectations, so their stock is probably going to go down a little bit. You know, Netflix is the same. HBO gained subscribers, so it significantly went up, but the thing is, they can't continue beating expectations all the time, so we're gonna see a little dip. Yeah, we have very little room for error. I myself have almost half of my portfolio in these 2 entertainment companies, so it's AT&T and Disney. That's about 45% of my account. I watch a lot of shows. In fact, there's a site, track.tv, where I put in all of the shows and movies I've ever seen. An entire year of my life I've spent watching. I think subscription-based businesses are really nice to have. You know, 2 of the biggest examples were Netflix and Spotify. And Netflix is a leader for video, and Spotify is the leader of audio. And they're both subscription-based businesses. In fact, I think I figured out the best business model for startups even, you know, and those are subscription-based companies. In fact, subscription-based companies, you know, Netflix is one of them, and you can see that it has like 3 different tiers. You can have different tier systems of payments. So, you know, you got like the free version, the plus version, the basic and whatnot. A subscription-based business is very low cost to maintain. And in fact, it's very easy to scale. You can really accelerate your growth the more you invest in.